The most feared punishment in Viking society wasn't death. It was something far worse. And it was perfectly legal for your neighbor to do it to you. We've been sold a version of the Vikings that's mostly axes and longships and glorified mayhem. But here's what those TV shows skip. The Norse people built one of the most structured legal systems in the medieval world, centuries before most of Europe had anything remotely comparable. And when that system decided you had crossed a line, the punishments it handed down were designed not just to hurt you, but to erase you, to make you cease to exist as a person while you were still breathing. 10 punishments, some you've heard of. Some will surprise you, and at least one of them historians have been arguing about for 200 years, until a team of medical researchers in 2021 finally weighed in. And the answer is stranger than anything the show Vikings ever put on screen. Let's go back to the 9th century, the Norse world. Before we get into the punishments themselves, you need to understand the machine that delivered them, because without this piece of context, none of what follows makes sense. The Vikings had courts, real ones. 3 tiers, local courts called things, regional things, and at the top, the national outlawing in Iceland, established in 930 AD. That makes the Icelandic outlawing the oldest functioning parliament in the world, and it is technically still in operation today. Most European legal systems wouldn't reach that level of organization for another 3 or 4 centuries. But here's the part that should genuinely stop you cold. There were no judges, no written law books. The entire legal code of the Norse world was carried inside the memory of a single person called the law speaker, who stood at the law rock each year and recited 1/3 of the code from memory, completing the full recitation over 3 years, then starting over. No backup copy, no royal court behind it. Just one man's memory and community enforcement. Ordinary free men decided cases. Alliances and social power often mattered as much as the facts of the case. And the entire thing, the courtroom, the legislature, the town hall, the social marketplace, happened outdoors, at a designated meeting place once a year. The saga of Njal's Burnt Njal, one of the great medieval Icelandic texts, is essentially a multi-decade legal drama. 2 families trading legal maneuvers and blood feuds across generations, all running through the thing courts. That's how central this system was to Norse life. And the first punishment on our list lived at the absolute top of that system's power. Outlawry. The Norse called full outlawry skoganga, literally going into the forest. You ceased to exist as a legal person. Your property was seized. Nobody could shelter you, feed you, or help you. Anyone who encountered you could kill you on the spot, in a field, on a road, on a beach, with 0 legal consequence. No vergild owed, no charges filed. You were fair game, like an animal. Scholars call it social death. And many historians argue it was functionally worse than execution because execution ended in minutes. Outlawry could last a lifetime. There was a lesser version, a 3-year exile, still with legal rights intact abroad. Still essentially a death sentence if you had no resources and no allies waiting for you across the water. In 982 AD, an Icelandic court handed down one of these 3-year sentences to a man named Erik Thorvaldsson. You know him as Erik the Red. He had already been outlawed from Norway for manslaughter. Then in Iceland, he killed a man named Eyjolf the Foul and a man named Hrafn the Duelist in a property dispute over some borrowed roof beams. 3 years. Get out. So Erik sailed west, and he found Greenland. He spent his exile mapping it, named it something appealing, and came back to Iceland recruiting settlers. His banishment accidentally produced the Norse colonization of a continent. That's what happens when you exile a man with nowhere to go and nothing to lose. Now, every punishment system needs a currency, something everyone agrees has value. In the Viking world, that currency was honor, not money, not land. Honor, your reputation, your word, your standing among your peers. And the second category of punishment attacked that currency directly. Nidstong, the nithing pole. If someone had wronged you and the legal route wasn't available, or you wanted to inflict maximum shame before a legal case, you could cut down a hazel pole, impale a freshly severed horse's head on top of it, point it at the offender's home, and speak your curse aloud. often with runic inscriptions carved into the wood. The concept behind it was nide, being publicly marked as unmanned, cowardly, morally contemptible, a nithing. In a society where honor was the primary social currency, the damage was catastrophic. A public broadcast, everyone who passed that house knew what lived inside it. The law took it just as seriously. Being called a nidingur, a coward, an unmanned man, gave the accused person the legal right to kill the accuser on the spot without facing any murder charges. The insult was considered so grave that lethal retaliation was justified and proportional under Norse law. In Egil's saga, the poet and warrior Egil Skallagrimsson raises a nidstone against King Eirik Bloodaxe and Queen Gunhild of Norway after a land dispute, formally cursing them aloud in ritual form, calling on the land spirits to deny them peace in their own kingdom. There's a record in Vatnsdæla saga of a man named Jökull raising a nithing pole against another man named Finnbogi for refusing to show up to a scheduled duel. Jökull carved a human face into the wood, killed a mare and placed the post into the animal's chest, facing toward Finnbogi's home. And here is the part that makes this genuinely strange. In 2006, in Iceland, a farmer raised a nithing pole against his neighbor for running over his dog. The tradition never fully died. Speaking of duels, the Vikings had a formalized version, and it was one of the most legally interesting institutions in the medieval world. Holmgang, judicial combat. If a legal dispute couldn't be resolved through the thing courts, or if the insult was too personal for fines to cover, either party could issue a challenge. Combat took place on a small island, or on a marked-off cloak laid on the ground. 3 shields per combatant. The challenger struck first, you alternated. The fight ended at first blood, or when a combatant stepped off the marked area. Killing your opponent in a sanctioned holmgang was not murder. No vergild owed, the law simply did not treat it as a crime. And that created an immediate, obvious problem. Professional fighters, the kind of men who had spent their whole lives in combat, sometimes working in berserk states that modern researchers link to either ritual trance or specific pharmacological preparation, realized they could challenge ordinary farmers to holmgangs over land, livestock, or women. The farmer had 3 options: surrender everything, show up and die, or refuse and be permanently branded a coward, which carried its own devastating legal and social consequences. It became an extortion racket. Legal extortion, backed by the court system itself. Iceland banned holmgang in 1006 AD, specifically because of this abuse. The law had created a loophole large enough to walk a longship through, and it took almost a century to close it. Now we get into the harder punishments, the physical ones. Vergild comes first, not because it was physically brutal, but because it was the foundation that held everything else up. Man price. Every free person had a monetary value assigned to their life and to specific injuries. A lost eye had a price. A severed hand had a price. A broken tooth had a specific fine attached to it. The Gulathing law and Frostathing law, Norway's oldest written legal codes, laid all of it out in detail. The logic was practical. Blood feuds could spiral across generations, each killing answered with another killing, entire families wiped out over decades. Vergild offered an off-ramp. Pay the price, settle the debt, end the cycle. A freeman's life was valued at roughly 200 solidi. Failure to pay Vergild meant automatic outlawry. That brings us to thraldom itself, because this was not a fringe institution. Historians estimate that between 10 and 20% of the Norse population were thralls. 1 in 5 people, possibly, living with no legal personhood whatsoever. They slept at the dark end of the longhouse alongside livestock. Their owners held full legal right to beat them, maim them, or kill them. And thraldom wasn't just something you were born into. It was a sentence. A woman convicted of theft could be ordered into slavery of the person she stole from. That's in the sources. Courts handed it down directly. The only exits were purchasing your own freedom, which was rare and required accumulating money you were barely allowed to touch, or a formal ritual freeing. But even freed thralls remained socially subordinate to their former owner's family, sometimes for generations. The stain didn't wash out quickly. Blinding and maiming occupied a specific legal tier below outlawry, but above fines, used for sexual crimes, serious assault, offenses against the king or his household. The reasoning was deliberate. A permanently maimed person walking around in public was a living advertisement of what they had done. And for a Norse person whose entire existence was built around clan membership, family obligation, and community standing, that was devastating in ways that are hard to put into words for a modern audience. Grettir the Strong, the subject of one of the great Icelandic family sagas, was outlawed for 20 years after a series of killings. He spent the last years of his life hiding alone on the island of Drangey, off the north coast of Iceland, a sheer volcanic rock barely accessible by rope, one of the longest outlawry sentences recorded in the sagas. He was eventually killed there by men who used sorcery, according to the saga, after his strength mysteriously failed him. Before we close, 3 things worth sitting with. The word law in English may derive directly from the Old Norse word lög. The Danelaw, the large swath of England under Viking control in the 9th and 10th centuries, left that linguistic inheritance embedded in the language you're hearing right now. Viking women could initiate divorce and bring independent legal claims at the Thing courts. English women couldn't do this for centuries after the Norman conquest. The legal standing of women under Norse law ran well ahead of most of contemporary Europe, and the entire Norse legal code, every rule, every fine, every precedent, was stored in one person's memory. No written backup, no redundancy. One man at the law rock reciting it year after year, keeping the whole structure alive through memory alone. A system that complex, that structured, that consequential, running on one man's unwritten memory and community enforcement. And it worked well enough to produce the oldest functioning parliament in the world. Not chaos, not savagery. Something stranger and more sophisticated than that. And when it came for you, the punishments it carried were designed to reach you in ways that killing alone never could. So tell me in the comments, which of these punishments hits hardest to you? The Blood Eagle debate, the Holmgang loophole, or the concept of outlawry as social death? I'm genuinely curious which one lands the worst. If this changed how you think about the Vikings, hit that like button and share it with someone who still thinks they were just raiders with no rules. And make sure you're subscribed, because next week we're going inside another civilization that kept order through methods that make this look almost reasonable.